Hello and welcome to Mexico News Network's Breaking News. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Elisa Carballo. We have excellent information for you coming right ahead. Remember, Mexico News Network is your #1 source for reliable information on business and investments in the Americas, stock markets and bonds, and also corporate information all on Mexico. So browse through our website on www.mexiconewsnetwork.com, our own digital content platform. Now let's begin with today's main headlines. NASA's Ames Research Center, in collaboration with the Mexican Space Agency, recently agreed to develop and create mini satellites. In addition, they will also be working toward the extension of the residences program for new Mexican students all throughout the year 2016. Javier Mendieta Jimenez, CEO of Mexico's Space Agency, along with Eugene L2, director of NASA Ames, agreed at a meeting the realization of these projects actually have the purpose of strengthening the strategic alliance and spatial development in Mexico as part of the agenda that both organizations have for this year 2016. Now, in a statement issued by Mexico's Ministry of Communications and Transportation, the dependency announced that both officials led the session where they defined the actions along with guidelines for cooperation to be developed between the two organizations. Besides all these projects, this year the two organizations also seek to collaborate on projects and develop spatial dissemination of satellite imagery applications to effectively alert the public about possible natural disasters. Also, during the meeting, they defined NASA's participation in the 2016 International Astronautical Congress to be held in the city of Guadalajara, Jalisco, which will aim to promote the development of the space sector in Mexico. In more information, the state of Querétaro is growing at a staggering 10% annual rate and is considered one of the main industrial centers of Mexico. During the past few years, the state has gained great potential in the aerospace industry at a worldwide level and is also one of the top places at a global level in the automotive industry, as currently there are major automotive firms in Querétaro, car plants of Ford, Volkswagen, Nissan, and BMW, for example, which supply mainly the U.S. market. Marco del Prete, Secretary of Sustainable Development of the Government of Querétaro, said that the state is the #5 largest destination for foreign investment in the airspace today, and 1,300 overseas companies are actually located in the state of Querétaro. The governor, Francisco Domínguez Servién, said that the airspace sector is the one with the greatest growth potential. Bombardier, for example, was the first company to get into the state, and its requirement to establish its offices in Querétaro was to also create an aviation college. Consequently, other companies started arriving into the state, such as Safran, Airbus, and recently a specific center of research and aeronautical innovation was inaugurated in the state. The airspace industry in Querétaro is the most powerful sector in the state. Nonetheless, they also strive to excel in other industries such as renewable energy, for instance, and tourism. All of this in addition to being the state in Mexico with the highest level of solar radiation, thus opening the door to a great deal of opportunities in several and different sectors. In more news, during the next 4 years, an $85.8 million investment is expected in Mexico, incoming from 14 to 16, roughly, British companies, all dedicated to clothing and shoes from the retail sector. Agustín del Valle, head of the retail, food and drink sector of the British Embassy in Mexico, explained that the reason why he sees in Mexico a potential market is mainly because he is actually looking to expand the diversification of the exportations. Nowadays in Mexico, there are already some British brands of the retail division, such as Hamley's Toy Store, which is the very first one in the entire American continent. Also, the women's clothing label Karen Miller and the company Ted Baker. All of this in addition to Dr. Martens, a firm solely dedicated to the craftsmanship of boots. Now, some of these brands were introduced into the country during the dual year Mexico-United Kingdom, which actually was announced back in November 2014 and will officially end during the month of March of this year 2016, in which many exchanges and benefits have actually been achieved between the two nations involved. Del Valle assured that little by little British brands are starting to expand their presence because they used to focus mainly and only in Mexico City and the center of the Republic. However, now they are even considering reaching the Riviera Maya in the state of Quintana Roo. In more news, BMW Mexico and Nissan Mexico signed an alliance to strengthen their zero-emissions vehicle infrastructure while seeking new business projects and incentives that may actually benefit hybrid and electronic models of both companies. Now, this union actually represents, for those who own a car from any of the two brands, the possibility of having access to the largest charging network in Mexico. Maria Eugenia Escobedo, Director of Sales of BMW Mexico, said that electric mobility is a very important step for the automobile industry, and with these partnerships signed, they will strengthen their commitment in the country, in terms of environmental benefits, of course. This means that they can now advance toward what the future should actually hold and be for the entire world. The purpose of this business venture and alliance is to create infrastructure that can actually be used by vehicles belonging to either of the two brands, meaning that a BMW can use Nissan charging modules and vice versa. The German company said that the Charge Now website will be available for all Nissan Leaf users, where they will be able to search the several charging points available all throughout Mexico. According to Jorge Vallejo, director of the Zero Emissions Nissan Mexican division, there are more than 1 million electric and hybrid vehicles on the streets of the entire world. And by the year 2021, it's estimated that the sales of these cars may reach 2.2 million globally, meaning a 400% increase at the very least. Now moving along to Mexico's economic indicators. Mexico's IPC index increased 657.2 points or 1.55% to 43,058.22 on Monday, February 15th from the 42,401 registered in the previous trading session. Looking back, Mexico's IPC index lost 14.2 points or 0.03% during the last 12 months, going from 43,072.42 points in February of 2015. The US dollar versus the Mexican peso decreased 0.0786 or 0.42% to 18.84 on Monday, February 15th from 18.91 in the previous trading session. Looking back, the US dollar versus the Mexican peso gained 3.965 or 26.66% during the last 12 months, going from 14.87 in February of 2015. Consumer prices in Mexico increased 2.61% year-on-year in January of 2016, accelerating from a 2.13% growth in the previous month, which is above market forecasts of 2.52%. Now, this was the highest reading ever since July of 2015, as cost of food and housing actually rose at a faster pace. On a monthly basis, prices actually went up by 0.38%. In regard to prices of food and non-alcoholic beverages, they all went up by a faster 3.78%, and cost of housing and utilizes increased by 1.52%. Cost of education recorded the highest increase registered. Meantime, restaurants and hotels rose by 4.15% from 4.21% back in the month of December, and transport prices rose at a slower pace. In contrast, communication costs actually fell by 7.57%. On a monthly basis, consumer prices went all up by 0.38%, following a 0.41% growth in December of 2015. In regard to the core index, which actually strips out some volatile food and energy prices, they all rose by 0.19% on the month, bringing the annual rate to a 2.64% from 0.31% and 2.41% respectively registered in December. Sadly, this was all for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, I am your host, Elisa Carballo, and follow us on social networks on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. Don't forget to log on to our website on www.MexicoNewsNetwork.com, your #1 source for reliable, useful, and positive information about Mexico. This was Breaking News. We'll see you next time.